We're going ahead and start the work session. Ralph is going to talk about LERTA, and then Lori's going to do some budget stuff.
We do have a PowerPoint up on the screen. I apologize, my glasses are fogging up, so I'm going to have to try to get through this. Obviously, introduction slide. We're talking about the LERTA Ordinance or Act. LERTA stands for Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act, approved by the General Assembly in 1977. And then it gave authority for municipalities to create an incentive through tax abatement over a scheduled amount of time, 10 years being the maximum. And I'm going to go through what we're looking at it, why we're looking at it, and so on through this little presentation. This is our agenda for the LERTA part of the work session. Why are we doing this? The LERTA, the properties covered, the 71 Act, the schedule for tax exemptions, the sample exemption schedule, the dollar value, and so on. You can see that. Let me skip down here. We did the strategic management plan earlier this year. We completed it. In that plan, the recommendations were to increase revenues. So, and that also in our budgeting process, look at ways to incorporate the recommendations as well as increase revenues. This is right out of the strategic management plan where they recommended develop the LERTA program. It says here commercial and residential properties are included, a 10-year program, graduated scale. There's options on that which we'll touch on. What is the LERTA? It is a tax exemption. Excuse me 1 second. Jolie can come in. 1 second. LERTA was originally spoke to industrial and commercial properties. You can see residential properties are not covered. Yeah. The 1971 Act did touch on residential properties. One second, I feel like I'm going to sneeze here. This is just an example of a schedule for your review. Council would have to decide what type of schedule. Again, the maximum length is 10 years. We need to decide the minimum dollar amount spent to qualify for the exemption. And we need to look at the actual costs met and verify that work. And then, of course, on the property, a very key point is verifying that work that's done. What is generally excluded? The ordinary upkeep and maintenance of properties is normally excluded. We need to set the rules and regulations. Like, for example, if somebody applies for a reassessed value, they tend to be knocked out of the program. If the property, they don't pay their taxes on the base value, they can be excluded from the program. Of course, property is damaged by fire and so on. We must hold a public hearing to determine the boundaries of the LERTA district. And at that point in time, we would invite the Planning Commission, the Bellefonte Area Industrial Development Authority, and so on to comment. We must work, once the details are established, we must reach out to the county and school district and get their approval of their ordinance and to make it a complete program where all three taxing bodies offer the same program. We have researched a number of ordinances. We talked to the consultant that helped with the strategic management plan. We talked to the administrator that worked with us for DCED. They all said, get your solicitor involved. So we're recommending on behalf of the committee to get the borough solicitor involved in looking at creating the ordinance, making sure the wording is correct. There are some questions. The mixed-use buildings in the downtown district, you know, we want to make sure we have the correct act, and they do qualify. I think the original thoughts were the downtown area being the most critical as far as renovations or redevelopment, and the waterfront district. You know, both are very key districts. We're trying to encourage redevelopment or renovations of existing buildings, redevelopment of property, like the waterfront property. We just got to make sure that the ordinance is correct, has all the correct acts referenced, and all of that it stands up, you know, to challenges if a challenge should occur. A lot of these regulations, acts came out of redevelopment ordinances and laws in the 1960s. They went into the 1970s, so that's why you see a lot of, you know, points about deteriorated properties and areas like that. I can't say we have districts like that, but we have a couple of properties that might be blighted. That's, again, kind of the legal area. Do we have to have a certain number of deteriorated properties? Do we have to have a certain number of properties that are abandoned and so on? We want to make sure we get good legal advice on those questions. We've had questions in setting up the boundaries. How far do we go? Do we go into the residential areas? We just want to make sure if we do, you know, what's covered. Some ordinances covered residentials, some did not. Council's going to have to decide on what you want to achieve with this type of incentive, what's most critical to you, and then, you know, go forward with that. The Finance Committee and the staff has looked at a lot of questions on this. We try to answer any questions you might have, if you have any at this time. If not, we'll go into some review of funds if you would like.
I have a question, Ralph.
Sure.
Say a person has a property worth $200,000,
Yes.
puts $100,000 into the property, and which will increase his assessment, I'm guessing, or not?
Yes.
That would be reassessed?
Yeah, if they
Okay,
get a
so-
building permit, that's usually the trigger.
Okay, so he has a reassessment of the property, turns around the next year and sells it for $400,000. Does the tax abatement go with the property or just with the first owner?
All the laws I saw say that abatement goes with the property. You're not paying on 400, you're paying on the 1994 assessed value. So even though the property's sold, you're paying less taxes over here based on a schedule that's agreed upon in the ordinance. And that incentive goes with the property. So the next buyer, let's say you're in year 3 and you're at 80% of the abatement, you know, you're getting 80% of the abatement off.
Is the abatement based on the original person's property, or is it what on the sale of the property?
The base stays the same. You always pay the base.
In other words, if it's $300,000 when he gets the tax abatement, but the property's actually worth $400,000, but when the property transfers, do they still say the
No.
$300,000?
That's property value.
Yeah, property value and assessment are two different things. Market value, property value are different than assessed value. The assessed value is an imaginary number from 1994. I call that, but there's figures on how to determine that. But that assessed value, first of all, the incentive is only for the increase assessed value. Has nothing to do with the base assessed value. That increase incentive, or the incentive goes for the increase that goes with the property.
Would be the only thing that abatement's
Yes.
based on? Okay.
Yes, the people pay whatever they're paying now, so to speak. they do an improvement, let's say it's $100,000 improvement. That doesn't mean that the assessed value, I'll just say $50,000 in assessed values goes up, or the assessed value is increased by 50,000. That's the part that gets the incentive, only that part.
Yeah, I mean, you could put a new kitchen, you could completely renovate a kitchen, take out a couple walls probably, maybe redo a bathroom or two within that 100,000 and never need a building permit.
Yes, if you do all that and you don't need a building permit, we're gonna figure out how we wanna verify costs. We typically use a building permit, but even that, it's suggested you have an engineering firm or somebody verify the costs spent. Make sure that it's a fair system. They're getting a value, they're putting in a true value and getting a assessment reduction or abatement program based on that number. There's some other questions.
Timeline on this, what are we looking at to complete?
The normal timeline is a 10-year program, but I've seen 5, I've seen 6.
When we start planning this, what's our planning
Oh,
time?
well, there's no deadline. I think maybe when I originally started looking at this, I was thinking we had to do it before the end of the year. But as I got to looking, that's not the case. I hate to say this word, I'm not even going to say it, but a neighboring municipality did theirs in April, April of the year. Of course, the county's on the same calendar we are, but the school district is on a fiscal calendar. Basically, it doesn't matter. Whenever we get ready for the ordinance, when we're ready, and we got it drafted out, then we take it and show it to the county and say, this is the district, this is what we're talking about, this is how many properties, and so on. And then we take it to the school district and do the same thing. And we ask them to put it on their agenda. So whenever all 3 are ready, all 3 have adopted the same ordinance, then the program can start and have full benefit.
I think the incentive right for us to move on this now is it would benefit the development of the waterfront property.
Yes.
Because that developer would benefit from the abatement of any assessed tax increase
Yes.
for the improvements that they do on that property. But we were looking primarily at least initially, at the central business district, highway commercial, village commercial, and the waterfront district.
So we're thinking by spring.
Probably by
Yeah.
spring, realistically, by the time we get our draft worked out, get the legal questions ironed out, take it to the school district and take it to the county, or probably looking at the spring of the year.
But if we have this in place when the waterfront group comes back and is ready to go, then we would have this program in place for them to be able to take advantage of it.
Makes sense. Is there, I think you said at the beginning that council established limits of how much tax abatement they would take?
There was a 1988 amendment to the original LERTA Acts that said you have to have a minimum amount spent in your program, so to speak. So council's going to have to decide. We saw numbers 25,000, maybe, and some numbers were, let's say, commercial, industrial was a number. The ones that had residential was a number different, maybe lower. But that's something that council has to decide, and even, you could even put in a maximum, like how much are you willing
That's what I mean, yeah.
if someone does a multi-million-dollar project, how much of that increased value is going to be allowed in the program.
Because the borough's gonna have more expenses if it's a large project, just streets and maintenance, that kind of stuff too, right?
It depends. Now, you look at our downtown, the work is on a property. So let's look at the Kreider Exchange, for example. Easily, if someone went to renovate, you could easily spend $1 million renovating that building, not touch the sidewalk, not touch the alleys, and so on. What the increased assessed value would be, I don't know. Let's say it's $250,000, then that would be the number, unless we have a cap or something
Yeah.
on how much we want to allow spent. for the assessed value increase to be in the program. But it could be, let's say, the waterfront district, that's new construction. You know, that's gonna be, you know, maybe $10 million or so. And of course, the assessed value, whatever it is now, is gonna be much, much greater. The way the borough benefits is down the road. You give an incentive today to encourage property owners to spend money, you're gonna get your money back. Even, you're gonna start to get it back a few years, 2 years down the road. Usually it's 100% the first year, no increased assessed taxes. Second year is typically 90%, third year 80%, and so on. But as I say, you could do it differently. You could do a 5-year program, a 6-year program. It's entirely up to council to decide. I can say typically it's the full 10 years, of the act allows 10 years, and it's typically that 100, 90, 80, and so on to the last year.
Yeah. No, I think we'll be okay, but I think the biggest problem is gonna get the school board to go along with it.
Yes, now there's history of the school board at Bellefonte of allowing these types,
Yeah.
similar, might have been a different act, might not have been LERTA, but I think up in Penn Eagle or the new Benner Park, there was some 10-year programs, maybe even for the Zero property out here in Axeman. There has been, I know, a couple done in this school district.
But ultimately, the school district is going to benefit
Yes.
anyway, because
Yeah,
they would be on the
eventually, yeah, when they
same,
get to
the same schedule, and 10 years down the road, they would
Yes.
benefit from that increase in assessed value.
So I think that's why the consultant suggested this as a way, you know, you're going to get the value down the road. So why not encourage property owners to, you know, bite the bullet and renovate the building and so on. You're going to get it down the road, that improved assessment value.
We're still getting the assessed value taxes anyhow.
Yeah, the
Right.
base,
So-
Right,
so
you don't lose
The only
anything.
difference is the percentage, or the difference in the reassessed value
Yes.
and the original.
yes,
Yeah.
the base they have to pay no
Right.
matter what. If they're
Right.
not paying, they're not in the program.
Right,
If they're back behind taxes, they're typically not in the program.
yeah. So it's an incentive to bring businesses
Exactly.
and
It's
make
an-
improvements?
It's an incentive to
Investment.
redevelop or renovate
Yeah.
properties.
Yeah, and to
Or
increase our
build-
tax base.
Yeah, build new where the case, and there's caveats in the rules, like they gotta go through HARB, they gotta go through council, they gotta get a building permit. They gotta do all those steps before they're even eligible. If they don't, they're not eligible. So you have that side of control as well.
Did we bring up whether it was residential or only commercial?
We touched on it. What I found, that 77 LERTA Act has nothing in it about residential. A prior act from 1971 was referenced, and that brought in residential. I know the committee talked about whether it should be in, should it be out. The biggest question I would have is your mixed-use buildings.
Yes.
You got commercial on the first floor,
Right,
residential on the second floor and up. Those are the buildings that you most want renovated. You want to get that whole building in the program. The single-family home, I think it's a debate for council. Is an incentive even necessary, except for maybe a couple handfuls of properties? And maybe you can pinpoint those properties versus the whole borough or the whole district, you know?
Well,
But-
realistically, any kind of residential renovation, for that kind of renovation to actually increase the assessed value of the property would require pretty massive
Yes.
investment.
Yes,
It's going to be more than, doing your kitchen or putting on
Yes.
it, and it cannot include maintenance projects,
that's correct.
like
So-
putting a new roof on, or painting, or fixing your sidewalk.
Yeah, I can try to think of someone that like the gentleman up on top, but near Buddy by Allegheny and Curtin that repaired the house by fire. That, it'd been nice to create an incentive. Yeah, Dawn's giving me the time signal. Let me, if there are any other questions, if not, we'll turn it over to Lori, go over a few funds. All right, well, I think we're going to plan on some additional work sessions Deb might mention that in the regular meeting as possibly even a special budget session on an off meeting night. So thank you very much. Sure.
Corner, Melissa's spot, you can.
Of the fire company budget, the fire department. We did present this to the executive committee of the fire department last week, and they approved it. There's not a whole lot in here above and beyond what's normal. They want to purchase more hose, which we've been trying to do a little bit every year. They want to begin to put aside some monies for the future purchase of new apparatus. So there's no tax increase. I moved .01 mils from the fire equipment to the fire department operating. There's no increase, it's just a move. So it's a balanced budget. The townships, Spring and Benner and Marion pays a flat smaller rate, do contribute to this fund because we provide fire protection to the townships. So basically it's a balanced budget. It does include, they did get a grant for recruitment and retention. So while it looks like a really high amount, the revenue comes in, we get the expense, we pay it, we applied for the revenue and get reimbursed for it. So it's just an in and an out.
I have one quick question. Since the other municipalities put in, where does that show up in on this?
It shows up in the 358, 110.
350, okay. Spring, okay, that's what the SBM means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Gary's here if you have any questions. He can help answer them too if you have any specific questions. We do physicals for them as a preventative item. So we have physicals budgeted. We've been doing that for a number of years now.
The other thing I'll add to this is this is the first time I think I've ever seen a number in capital projects fund. And they were able to find $7,400 there. And we talked about other means to get some more money in there. And I know that the EMS has applied for so much, requested so much. And, you know, like the townships do to us, a lot of times the money they're using, they'll break it up a little bit and kind of split it around. And I'm suggesting that we look at doing the same thing with our fire department and EMS. If they're looking at 0.5, maybe we look at moving 2.5 of that to the capital budget line item for the fire department, so that we can maybe help grow that capital projects fund for needs of, you know, either equipment or apparatus, things like that. And Gary could talk to more whether they could spend that money, but
Where does the funding typically come from for apparatus?
taxes.
Taxes?
So we did the fire equipment fund, I don't remember if it's the last time or the time before, but that's also supported by real estate taxes. So that's the portion that we use to pay for the loans on the fire equipment. So it's supported by taxes as well. But Spring, Benner, and Marion do contribute to that one as well. The county sets up the percentages. They tell us what the assessed value is per entity, and then it's a percentage. So that's how we figure out how much is Spring, Benner, and ours.
I just add about I'm guessing 5 years ago, but I might be wrong on that, we agreed on a formula. you know, that how this would work out, how the formula and the expenses would be figured out each year. So that's what Lori's referring to.
Thank you.
And I will say that, in credit to the two fire stations, they've each have bought apparatus with their own money in the past, and that has been a benefit, but, that's not something that we can count on, and that's why we need to have a little bit more money in the budget, because it's just been, like you're living week to week, your paycheck a lot of times with what's going on. So, and the increase for physicals went from 450 to 850 after last year's budget was approved.
It was up
So-
over 1,000, but then they come back down to about 8.5, yes.
So, there's needs there. I mean, they're all volunteer, they do a great job, and, we need to support them, because we need them.
I think their concern is you have a couple engines that are around 20 years old, right?
Like
Can you
24,
come
yeah.
up to the podium so that we can hear you?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, what?
Come up to the podium, please.
So we can
hear you.
I think that their concern is there's a couple of pieces of apparatus that are 20-plus years old that we need
Yeah,
to start thinking about.
22 and 24 years old. Like I stated in my report, if you read that, that was the two pieces. They're actually the two of the main fire trucks that actually run almost every fire call out of the borough at any time. 340 calls in the report. Actually, we're at 370 as of yesterday. Anywhere between 30 and 45 calls a month. So, and the two pieces of equipment that we're talking about that's aged is they're getting old and run down.
So the capital fund that you were talking about, I don't see that, this is in the other fund, is that correct?
It's down at the bottom. If you look, if you go to 411,950 and look down, you'll see transfer to capital budget, capital budget fund, and it's $7,400.
Oh, okay, so what you're saying, so I understand this, is that there was some additional funds after you put all the expenses in that could be used to transfer over to that, is that correct?
Yeah, wherever they found the money that they're
Okay.
able to move to there, that's what they did.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so that I can catch up. Randy, are you asking for an increase in millage?
I will at one point here when we get ready to, approve the budget. I think right now I need to know, what this 25% looked like and what the 50% looked like. If we're using monies from the EMS request. Because there's nowhere else to go. I mean, we can't invent money, so we have to use whatever funding that we have on the table right now. And it looks like right now EMS has 0.5, and so we need to see where that goes. And then
Okay.
what those numbers might look like and how it helps with, still, trying to do what we can for both entities, being a little bit more fair with it.
Okay. So you're trying to divvy it out of that little pot?
Yeah, I mean, that's all we
Okay.
can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just one question for Rob. The spring Benner or Walker calculation, do we periodically update that on the changes in appraised values and such?
I can answer that question.
The county does that.
The county
It's
does.
based on the assessments of 1994.
Yeah, but each year they.
I don't think so.
Well, each year, September, they do a
I asked
update.
them to give us new numbers
Yeah.
each year.
Yeah, we get new numbers, however they're determined, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of an increase.
Right. Yeah, the assessment value,
It's up
your
about
fixed
3%
is correct.
Yeah.
But since those townships have had more home building.
Yes.
Their value, their
Yes.
total overall assessments
Yeah,
increase.
as I said a moment ago, when we worked out the formula, we all agreed that the county would be the checking or the referee, so to speak. And we
Okay,
check it every year and then get the new numbers out to everybody.
okay.
If you look at the percentages over the last 5 years, John, you'll see Bellefonte Borough is slightly going down and they're slightly going up.
Because
just
they're growing.
Because of the development.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But
we're
it also has
capturing
to
that.
be the development in our coverage area, not
Yes.
just anywhere in the township.
Yes.
So, you know, if it's not within our coverage area, then that doesn't increase theirs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I think there's one township that, if you look back, I forget what year it was, 2008 or something, they were at 23, and now they're at 25.13. So that, you know, not much of a change there in that time span. And I will point out, Marion, that doesn't apply to Marion. They were paying just a $500 fee. I don't know if that's changed.
It's gone up some, but they're a flat rate because the fire department only covers the interstate for them.
Yeah, but if you looked at the numbers Gary provided,
I
they
know.
did quite a number
I know.
of trips into Marion.
But they only do a flat, they don't do a percentage.
It's sort of like the EMS question. You can't, how can we force them to pay?
Right.
You know, we just let them pay the flat amount whenever this agreement was made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, just as, and you know, I was primarily concerned with the new developments
Yes.
outside of our area.
Yes, it's
that-
captured.
Yeah, good. Okay, that's all.
Okay, so we need to stop this because it's past 7:30. Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Good evening. The November 1st Bellefonte Borough Council meeting is called to order. We held a legal executive session prior to this and then the work session on Roberta and the review of funds. I'd like to have Pledge of Allegiance, moment of silence, and then the roll call.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Eaton? Ms. Domboski is here by Zoom. Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Prendergast?
Here.
Mr. Halderman?
Present.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
I'm here.
Ms. Cleaton? Mr. Brackville?
Here.
Ms. Abbott?
Here.
Mayor Wilson?
Present.
Should we turn that off so we can see and also on the screen? Okay. Do we have any additions to the council agenda? Seeing none, public comments on any items that are on the agenda. Please come up to the podium, state your name, and which item you're talking about. Then talk.
Rick Jacobs, Lynn Street, 42-year resident, and I guess I'm supposed to talk about the band shell project that we're working on. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. We've been working on it for about a year and a half. I think we were here a couple of months ago talking about it. We've since solicited input from even more folks. It seems to be a universally popular idea. It's also growing in scope, which means we're going to be required to raise more money. And I can answer any questions. I don't know what you want me to cover exactly.
I'll just let anybody ask any questions they have for now.
The 25-year sinking fund, being that the borough can't invest money, what kind of legal entity, business entity will exist that will be able to have that fund, and how will the borough be protected in case that fund does not yield the desired results? the investment returns.
Fair enough. We've been working with the solicitor to try and put together an agreement, and I believe you have a copy of that agreement that forms an entity. We were told that we would get further in our fundraising if the borough supported it, but the entity would be through DBI, I believe. We would be a separate wing of that for raising the money, and I would assume that it would be invested through that wing. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the exact answer. Tom, do you?
No, I just know that the last time when this came up, we asked for council to sign on to the agreement, sort of the agreement of understanding between DBI, just, we've called it so many things, I forget what we want to call it, but the stage committee and the borough. And we're really not asking, we don't plan to ask the borough for money. We don't plan to, in fact, if plans go as we've outlined, we'll actually be donating some money to the Parks Department. But anyhow, so all we're asking now is really to have that signed, so that just says that we all agree to work together on this project. And we still have a lot of questions to answer, as you know, John, and you brought it up, and I thought it was a fair question for the operating fund, and we've tried to outline the best we can. If you have additional questions, I guess that's what you're asking now.
Yeah, I look at where you have a manager that's going to get paid 20% more than your janitor for the year, and that's going to book 40 bands within a year.
Well, we don't plan to have a manager at all unless it dictates that we have, this would be a facility that would house the concerts in the park that are at the gazebo right now, the arts festival, the tasting trail that rents a stage over there. So we want to start this out as this is actually, what we're doing is building this as a gift to the community, so the community can use it. If indeed down the road it gets known as a pretty good venue, and promoters would say, we'd like to come and put a concert on there, then if it gets to that point, 5 years down the road or so, we should have funds in order to put somebody in charge of doing that. The janitor business, basically, for cleaning up after a concert is $200 per show, which is not a lot.
It is, yes, a gift, but it's also a gift of obligation long-term. Because once the gift is given, then it is ours to maintain. And then we will also have to ensure the maintenance of it, us or somebody.
Well, that's why we're setting up these funds, so that you won't have any expense for the maintenance.
And that's why I look at the funds, Tom, and I ask the question,
Right.
when you're saying 8%, that is an extremely good rate of return. And because of our limitations as a government entity, we may not be able to invest in something like a stock fund.
I don't know that we're asking the borough to do any investing.
Well, if,
I was gonna be through DBI, and
but how are we then protected that we ever see those funds?
Well, it's a small town, John. I mean,
People leave all the time, Tom.
well, but we say we're gonna do it, and it goes to the borough. I mean, there's an agreement we're gonna sign that we're gonna work together on this.
Right.
All right.
But we already have a spot for, where the parks budget already gets 1.15 mils, which is over 50% of the real estate taxes that people in places like Benner Township and Walker Township pay. So when we talk about increasing the possible real estate taxes to the parks to maybe cover an obligation like this, one has to realize we're talking about a real estate tax burden. It's the same as what the growing townships around us are paying for their total real estate bill.
Well, we're getting into the weeds, and I think we need to talk about that, but we also need to, first of all, raise about $1 million. And if we don't do it, we're not going to do it. So,
But I think you need $2 million so that we are covered afterwards in that 25-year period, so that there is somebody here to operate and maintain that building.
well, we'll see about that. And
Can I jump in real quick?
go ahead,
as
Melissa,
park chair?
please do.
First of all, no one's asking the borough to raise taxes at all for this. The intention is to be 100% fundraised, and if it doesn't get to that point, then it's not going to be done. This MOU that was submitted is just so there's a bucket to put money in. The gentleman from the Banshell committee came a few months ago and council gave the green light for them to fundraise. Go on. It was a general consensus. I don't think there was any detractors from that. All they're simply looking to do is find a bucket to put money in so they can fundraise. This is not an MOU with the borough stating anything. Like, it's between the two different entities. So in the meantime, they can fundraise and the borough can come up with a separate MOU with them specifically. This is not a go ahead to raise taxes or to gift this to the borough. It's simply stating, yes, you can go fundraise money. BVI will collect that money in a bucket for you. That's all this is, and it is surprising that it's taking so long to get through. They just want to be able to apply for grants. So I hope that clears up some confusion.
I appreciate that clarification, Melissa. It's the downstream expense after the construction that concerns me, but I appreciate your clarification.
Is there a way that we can discuss that going forward and just approve this measure so that they can begin to fundraise and then have a separate discussion with whatever committee wants to have that discussion to discuss the finer details of what long-term gifting to the borough looks like? Because it doesn't matter if they can't raise money, what happens in 25 years if it never gets built. So maybe that would be a more optimal use of time and resources to have an agreement that benefits the borough long-term without taxpayer expense.
So maybe just to move things along a bit, what we could do is when we get to the point of making the motion, which I think is under the mayor's report, is it could be a split motion saying that we would go ahead for allow fundraising with the caveat that we'd go ahead and do this detailed stuff as a follow-up. That way, the concerns that John is raising can be addressed while still allowing the people to go ahead with the fundraising.
Well, I think that's what we've been looking for the last few weeks.
I just have one question, or two questions. In your preliminary talks and stuff, is there any talk about how big this is going to be, a square footage or something, or you guys have a preliminary?
We have a rough design. It's 50 feet across and about 40 feet deep. It's a nice size.
They have some concepts that they've showed.
Yeah,
We'll send them to you, Burrow. I don't know if you, buddy, I don't know if
I
you've
just
seen
wondered
them.
about the building itself, this how big it was, 2-story, 3-story, whatever kind of thing.
Well, it's a typical band
Okay,
shell,
shell.
you know, like there'd be room on there for the Nittany Valley Symphony, and we've already met with them, they've looked at our grounds and all that.
Well, when that's built, what's that going to Burrs Insurance? How's that work? Be added to Burrs Insurance.
Well, these are things we're gonna work, that's why we wanna work, we need to
Well, I don't
work
have a
with the
problem
borough.
raising funds,
And, but we can't do anything until all three entities sign the cooperation agreement.
no. You gotta try, yeah.
I appreciate Mr. Eaton's comments. I'm at the point where, this is just a bucket, as Melissa describes it. They haven't raised the funds. You look at the contract with DBI and the borough. If it doesn't happen, money gets returned, and
what it says.
this is off in the future. But I give them the go-ahead to go full speed ahead doing this fundraising project.
This doesn't lock the borough into anything.
Right.
So what we'll do is move on and we'll come back to this discussion under the mayor's
Okay.
report, so that we can have any other public comment.
Thank you.
I just want to add to, with the conceptual drawings that you've shown, that may not be what it is at the end, so
Yeah, yeah.
we can't get focused on it.
Right, I know.
I agree.
Yep. Thank you, Rick. Michael? Got one more quick one.
Hi, my name's Mike Desmond. I know a number of you as individuals for a number of years and such. I'm not from Bellefonte, I'm from State College, but I've joined a number of my friends, Tom Wilson, Rick Jacobs, and others working on this stage at Talleyrand Park. And I'm not here to tell you anything that you don't know, but I'd like to give you an affirmation. Bellefonte really has its act together, particularly when it comes to Talleyrand Park and the people who volunteer and make things happen in this community. This park is something really for you. I'm sure you are, but as someone who doesn't live in Bellefonte, but has some roots here, I just admire how this, and everyone does, how this park has evolved since in the 70s, and was largely citizens working with the borough, acquiring these lands, building this park, making additions and additions along the way. One of the things that impresses me about this park is the level of not just the popularity in Bellefonte, but the whole Center County area that people are run into in your park, and people will talk about your park. But what really moves it and makes things happen there are the volunteers in your community. I think you have at least, 40 days plus a year where there are events in your park, and they're largely led by volunteer organizations, which reflect greatly on your community. The Downtown Business Organization is largely led by young people, younger than our average age in this room, and that's to be recognized and applauded. This agreement that is before you is really nothing more except the next step for your park, and also in support of the leadership of your downtown organization, which you've lent support to as well. And I think you're fortunate to have this. I just want to state that I think you're so fortunate to have not only this park as a resource, but also people in your community who are willing to put forward the efforts and the trust and to make more good things happen for you here. So I just want to say kudos to you, and I hope you'll be able to give favorable opinion to this agreement here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve consent agenda items. Bill.
I'll second it, please.
Great. Anything, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. Written communications.
First one is a letter or an email we received on Diamond Improvements. It did have a name but no address. It just had some concerns they wanted to raise. As you know, we have some public hearings coming up. We'll talk about that later. Next item is elimination. Yes, I'm sorry.
Is it possible, Chief Weaver had given a presentation back in April, and we want to see if we could get that put on the website and then into Facebook as well.
You're referring to the one related to the diamond?
Yes.
And everything? Yes,
Yeah.
okay, we could do that if that's good with council.
You're
Okay.
talking, just to be clear for the public, in last spring, he put on a presentation about the safety issues at the Diamond.
Correct, yes.
And there was a PowerPoint presentation with that, and that's what you're asking. to
Right,
put
yeah,
on
the feeling is
website.
that, the more people know, the more they can, add some comments to
We
that.
probably can get the CNET, video and have the whole, him speaking in the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Another letter related is, concerned about eliminating the parking around the diamond. That's there for your review. And lastly, support requests for the Center County Library and Historical Museum. We do make a contribution to their system each year, and they're looking to see if that same level of funding can be maintained for 2022. That's all we have under written
Yes,
communications.
John.
Can I make a motion that we return to the policy of when we receive email or written correspondence that that is signed and also an address on the correspondence, so we.
John, that's out of order until we finish with the letter, and then we can do that.
Okay. Okay.
So this can either go, since this is the same request for the same level of funding as last year, this, I believe, can probably just go on to finance for them to put into the budget, unless you all want to have a specific motion to move forward with this at this point.
I'm happy to make the motion to go forward with it.
I'd second that.
Okay. So Eaton and Brackbill. Discussion?
It's the same number we gave them in the past.
Exactly the same, no change.
Good use for the money.
I just want to say I'm sorry the state doesn't step up and give the funds like they used to years ago. I know I was on council when the state library system, or the legislature, cut back all the funds for the state library system, which hurt all the libraries in the state, so it's just too bad that they don't decrease their funding.
Plus, the universities have shut down access to their libraries. Yes.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Now you can make your motion.
Okay. Can I make a motion that we return to a policy of what, that we used to have for written comments, that we both have a name and an address, so that when we receive comments from people, we know where they're coming from.
Second that motion.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was Eden and Haldeman. Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion?
I just want to say, I always thought you had that yet, because I know when I was on council, borough manager never forwarded anything, we told him, never forwarded anything that wasn't signed in the address.
Which
It
is,
does have a name but no address,
Yeah.
so we'll double check that.
Because every once in a while you get a letter of allegations about some employee or something else, they wouldn't sign it, so it shouldn't go any further than borough manager.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Any other written communications?
That's all I have this evening.
Does anybody else have any written communications? Seeing none, moving on to Community Office Affairs.
There's a couple items, and we have Gina here if there's any questions, but there's no planning commission this week. It's next week, the 8th. The review board, there was one item already taken care of in the consent agenda. There's a few administrative approvals. Nuisance code report is next week. The short-term rental, maybe a discussion or maybe a brief overview. Of course, Gina had a memo in the packet. Do you want to just briefly give us an update?
Sure. Hopefully you had a chance to read the memo in the packet. The committee met, I believe it was October 6th or in that first week of October. Did some really good work. We met for 3.5 hours. That recording is available to council if you would like to listen to it, and I can send that to you. We made some good progress, but as expected, with 8 stakeholders, it was difficult to reach consensus on most information, most of the items regarding short-term rentals. At the end of that meeting, a couple of committee members said, hey, it would really be good if we had another meeting. As I mentioned in the memo, that's not really in the scope of the work with the contract with Strategic Consulting Partners. However, they're willing to have that sort of follow-up meeting because they know that the committee still has things that they want to say and to try and clarify a couple points. So we will have that meeting, hopefully kind of middle of November is a target date we're shooting for. It's very hard to get 9, 10, 11, if you're including the consultants, people's schedules together. We will likely meet virtually. And in the interim, what Monica and Bob have decided, and myself, the three of us have decided, is that we will just have the committee share written comments about anything in the report. So there was a report generated, but I don't want to share it yet because I want the committee to have a chance to add or comment so that they feel like they are heard. And then once we receive all of those comments, we can have our final meeting. The committee can kind of go over the report that they want to have council see, and then we will present that final report to council. In addition to, if there are any committee members that feel that they still have things that need to be said, or they feel maybe that their voice wasn't heard during the meetings, I'm not sure, they're welcome. They're encouraged to send letter, write a position paper to also share with council. So that is where we are at.
So basically a minority report?
Yeah, I mean, it's there, like I said, there's good work. There's lots of back and forth conversation, but I think there are some fundamental areas regarding short-term rentals that we can't necessarily, don't think the committee's going to get past. And I think really what it's going to come down to, and what I've tried to emphasize with them, is it's not so much about the committee trying to rewrite the ordinance or even make necessarily modifications to it, but rather to present to council, here are things that council needs to consider when revising or approving or not approving the short-term rental ordinance. And that's what I'm hoping to present to you all, is that these are the things that you will need to consider as you're going through this. And what I would anticipate is there being at least a couple of work sessions on this ordinance before it goes back out to either be approved or back out for public comment. So that is where we are at. Do you have any questions for me?
In your memo, you're making a recommendation to see if the borough can put a stay on the acceptance of new permits.
Right. So what I included is just a brief list, and I remembered there was one more short-term rental on that list that I didn't include. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think 10. So I mean, that's kind of substantial when you're talking about, the borough and its size. Since March, since I've started to keep track of when new rental applications come in and whether or not they're short-term or long-term, I've had about 10, I think, short-term rentals come in that I have approved because I have no direction not to. And I was just brought it up for council whether you might want to consider temporarily halting approving those short-term rentals until we can get an ordinance on the books. And I see here that, maybe it's something that the borough solicitor needs to weigh in on whether that's appropriate to do. But I do know that there has been talk, and I have seen an influx of short-term rentals because people are trying to get those in anticipation of them being not able to run short-term rentals. So I wouldn't be surprised if I continue to see more, is what I'm getting at.
Do, oh, go ahead.
Let's say, so what I'm hearing is that we need a motion to send this issue of suspending the issuing of short-term rental permits to our solicitor, and if he agrees that it's okay, then we can do that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Prendergast and Eaton. Okay, now we can have the discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, on the short-term rentals, they still have to meet all the code requirements?
They do. Yep, like they have to have hardwired
Right.
fire alarms and.
The reason I ask that, and I'll let you know, with the Housing Board of Appeals, we had a person recently, we had to have a hearing, and that homeowner rented out their spaces in their homes without having a permit. Apparently about a year ago, they applied for a permit, zoning came in, did the inspection, they had a number of issues to fix before they could rent it out. This past year, they were basically caught renting it out in August, I think it was, last year. Code enforcement told them they were in violation. We had a hearing, I asked the homeowner if he knew he had to have a permit, he said yes. I said, in other words, you still rent it out even though you were in violation? He said yes. So the Housing Appeals Board sided with the code enforcement, because that's the rules and regulations. And the homeowner paid a $300 fine, which could have been a couple $1,000s if they fined him every day he had rented out, so. But that's only the second or third time we've met in 5 years, I think. So that doesn't come up very often.
Every week we're finding illegal short-term rentals. You know, it's high season for short-term rentals, obviously, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, there's usually a pretty good digital footprint. So, you know, it does take a bit of investigating, but if you're willing to do some investigating, and I've worked with Center Region Code, and we've been able to find some people that are renting without active rental permits. And, you know, the approach to that is just to say, hey, you know, we noticed that you are operating a rental, whether it be short-term or long-term. In this case, it's mostly, we're finding short-terms. You need to have a rental permit through Center Region Code and a zoning permit through the borough. Here are the applications. You shouldn't continue to rent until this is approved, you know, so, and for the most part, you know, you have compliance, you have people that either didn't know, or let's say they didn't know. Yeah.
So were any of the 10 that submitted for permits, were any of them part of the group that were renting illegally?
Yes, a couple of them. Yeah. And I did include, so, you know, I did include ones that maybe aren't actually necessarily active, because they had applied for a rental permit with me through zoning and also through Center Region Code. But once they got to the process where code's coming out and saying, okay, here's what you need to do, a couple of them, as you can see in the list, said, well, you know, we can't do that. And so they don't get their rental permit. I kind of I make a note in my spreadsheet, so that, you know, they shouldn't be renting then at that point, because they don't have an active rental permit, and we have.
Yeah, so I guess my issue with that is, I would hate to see somebody pushed into, you know, if they're trying to fix it, let's let them fix it.
Sure.
You know, and not put a hold on it, let them fix it, and then continue with what you're doing with code, you know, to still get that under control. But just because we are having issues getting an ordinance prepared, I don't think should stop somebody from trying to start up a short-term rental.
Sure. I mean, that's something that council has to consider. Do you want there to still be approval of continuing to approve short-term rentals at no, because right now we don't know how many short-term rentals are in the borough. We don't have a cap. You know, that's one of the things that the committee talked about, is what's the cap? Is it a percentage? Is it a radius of other short-term rentals in the area? Is it, so many in each block, whatever it ends up being, if there is a cap. Right now, that does not exist. So right now, my mode of operation is I get a rental permit application, I get the zoning along with that, and regardless of whether it's long-term or short-term, I approve it. So all I'm saying is council may want to consider that we don't continue approving short-term rentals because we don't have those numbers. We don't know how many, I could get 5 this week and I could get none in November, or it is November, sorry, December. So there's no cap. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Lone Zoomer. I agree with Randy. I feel like we're setting up residents for failure if we're allowing them to just keep them in limbo. Like, it just seems like you're setting them up for failure to be nabbed when they've put in a permit or requested information, like they can't move forward. So we're kind of getting them out to dry. So I would rather see I can't think of another ordinance that we've put on hold that then we said, oh, well, everyone has to stop until we figure this ordinance out if we were revising another ordinance. So I would prefer permits go forward, personally.
Gina, are short-term permits right now treated as if they were like long-term permits?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're just rental permits.
Okay.
Well, do we
Yeah.
have any zoning on them at all?
No, we don't, that is another fundamental issue that council is going to have to discuss once they're presented with the report from the committee. There are 2 fundamental viewpoints of short-term rentals, and depending on how you view them is dependent, then that determines whether they are allowed use in a residential area. In short, if you view a short-term rental as a business, then it is not permitted in the residential areas according to our current zoning. However, if you view a short-term rental as a rental, then they are currently permitted in our residential areas. But we have some committee members that view them as businesses, and we have some committee members view them as rentals. And so that is like the first fundamental difference right there. And depending on your viewpoint is they would say, well, it's not allowed in zoning, and then the other part would say, well, it is allowed in zoning.
Yeah, but then I would argue you're going to have a problem that even those that argue that it is a business, it's not a business until you get to 14 rental days, which means you have covered every single Penn State home football game.
Well, that's dependent on
No, it's 7 games. We get 7 home games.
Right, but I mean, each person's level of, where they're starting to make money is going to differ, but,
Up to 14 days, it's tax-free.
okay.
There's absolutely no tax up to 14 days.
Just let me say this, just in our current zoning, it's not defined. When I would say 5-6 years ago, when some of these started to come up on the radar, they were just reviewed or issued under the current zoning, which sees them as residential units.
Right.
And as long as you got a permit, you were okay. So you had to make some changes to the inside of the house, or smoke alarms or whatever. As long as you did that, you were issued a permit, you were okay.
Right.
This new issue with businesses is not, there's no definition of that. That's the kind of things that they're looking at.
Right.
So-
Well,
A short-term rental, is that like 3 days or 5
It's 30 days or less.
30 days or
There's
less?
there's an actual definition that a lot of municipalities use.
So that's 30 days a whole year.
Yes, usually in a calendar year.
Well, the reason I asked, I know back in the 80s when we had so many apartment rentals in Bellefonte, especially Lynn, Curtin Street, and a couple other streets, council decided back then to change the zoning to single-family residential to try and get rid of those rental apartments. Now, what I'm getting around to is if my neighbor rents his couple rooms out every weekend, all year, then that's more rental house than it is a single-family home, the way I look at it.
If it's one unit, there's no zoning against that, unless we change the definition. Now, if they go to 2 units, that's changing, that's doing something different in the zoning. We have to see if a duplex is permitted. But if they're simply renting a unit out, which is I think what is happening for the most part, or a house that already has 2 units, then they're not running into zoning issues. That-
Yeah, we're not really talking to the motion here. and I think
Yeah.
Right, I was gonna
Yeah.
just,
You know, when I view bed and breakfast and short-term rentals, with COVID and everything going on, I believe that people are more comfortable going into a short-term rental than into somebody's house. And we don't have a hotel yet, but we still want people to come into Bellefonte. And when they come into Bellefonte and you bring in your family, a short-term rental would be an excellent choice. And I'm not saying that the bed and breakfasts are bad, I'm just saying that there are differences to it, that there's not, you know, the owner doesn't live there, so it's like going to the beach and getting a beach house. You know, it's a normal thing. So I really don't see the issue in it. I get, you know, maybe some residents, you know, that some are getting grandfathered in, they're in the residential areas. But, you know, I think that the short-term rentals is a benefit to Bellefonte, not a detraction.
on a whole, I think you're right, but without being able to identify the short-term rentals and have some control over them, you get a lot of complaints from the neighbors.
Yeah.
I think the motion is that we're just
The
going to have
motion is
the
to
lawyer
have the
look at
solicitor,
it.
and
And I think that's,
I think what I'm going to do is say, I think this part of the conversation is out of our, I think this conversation can come after we talk to the solicitor.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I'm personally, or not even personally, but as the administrator, not pushing for one decision or the other. I just, because I noticed that, you know, we are not moving forward with this ordinance, and because I continue to get short-term rental applications, I just wanted to present that information to council for you guys to consider whether or not you wanted me to be halting those or just continuing with them, so.
So the motion on the floor is to send this to the solicitor to see what he thinks.
right.
After that, then we can come back and have this whole debate and decision.
The request she has now can still go through.
Yes.
Yes.
Until we get something back and go
Yes.
from there.
Legal basis to do otherwise.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Just to throw
Well,
one more thing into it, that we're still permitted, even without this, in the waterfront property, what are the 3 districts that they're permitted now?
The highway commercial, the central business district,
Yeah.
the waterfront business district, and even though it's not stated, I think we meant to also include village commercial, but I don't want to put words in there. That was not in the ordinance, but maybe it would
So
be.
those parts of the borough are fine. We're not doing
Any
anything with that.
place where there's a residential unit,
Right. I just want people
Qualify.
that they can, they're still available in those areas
Yeah.
to start the business, the Airbnb.
Okay, so if there's no more comments regarding sending it to solicitor, we'll move to a vote. Okay?
Good.
Okay. All in favor of sending it to the solicitor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So moved.
okay. Anything else?
Not really, you know, just that I see here it says council may take any action to outline instructions or next steps for the consultants or the stakeholder group. I don't know if you have any questions on anything I outlined. I do, as I already mentioned, I mean, we have a finite contract with Strategic Consulting Partners, and, you know, they've agreed to have this additional meeting, but I really think, I know that some committee members have expressed via email that they want this conversation with the stakeholder group to continue, and I that it was pretty clear from the beginning in the formation of the stakeholder group that it was going to be a very finite process for them, and that they were going to present concerns, things to consider to council. And so that's kind of where we're at with the consultants.
Help us with the time and counseling this evening, because we've already spent.
Yep.
Could you put together a memo for us of what you see as the next steps that would work best for you, and then we could bring that back?
Well, I don't, yeah.
I want to call a point of order. When we set this up, this group, it was hands-off on council until the group brought a ordinance. So, and that's where it's at. We're not here to add things. You know, we can discuss different things like you requested.
Yeah, I've
But as
personally.
far as the ordinance it goes, that's still in that committee.
The
Yeah.
recommendations to the ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I've intentionally not shared with you like their comments or our draft report or anything, because it's really just it's not ready for you guys to dive into. So
Keep up the good work, Gina.
And all I'm asking is that once that process is said, what do you think needs to be the next step?
sure, I can
That's all I'm
I can
saying.
put together like next steps that I think council needs to.
Because I don't want us making them just like you
Yeah.
said.
All right. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay. Moving on. Tom?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. I'm going to ask for a vote second for council to sign the cooperation agreement between the stage committee and DBI, so we can
I'll
start
make that
raising
motion.
funds. Thank you.
I'll second it.
There it is.
Bill and Prendergast. Does this motion include with a follow-up later for the details that John was asking
Yes,
for?
most definitely.
So this is approval to approve a fundraising campaign.
Yeah, this is just approval to cooperate with each other.
Okay. Call the
Okay.
question.
Okay, any opposition to calling the question?
No.
Okay.
It's not
All in
valid
favor,
input.
please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I want to thank, I just want to let the council know, if they don't already know, that our two chair people are Thomas Bathgate and present tonight, Rick Jacobs. And Tom Bathgate has been active with Penn State Engineering and Veterans Association, raising millions of dollars so the veterans can get into Penn State and do engineering. Rick Jacobs has been in our capital campaign for the Hill House Foundation. Mike Desmond, who's in the house tonight, was instrumental in the State Theater fundraising. And another person on our committee is Kate Custenborder, who's a Bellefonte resident, who is the director of development with PSU Alumni Association and Bellefonte High School. So it's not me. I'm just the linchpin here, but we've got 4 people who have probably combined raised many, many millions of dollars. So I'm very confident in their abilities to follow through with this and do it well.
I'm pleased that they were able to join.
And pleased, yes, and thank you very much for your time and dedication.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your vote to move forward.
Anything else?
That's it for today. We do have, just a real quick thing, Chief Weaver's not here because his mom had an accident and he's taking care of her. And the sergeant had to go out because we have an emergency out in the street, so.
Thank you. Next is my report, which is basically saying I attended the Drive Electric Coalition meeting on October 21st. I have nothing to present because I'm still waiting for the presentation materials. That's my report. Any questions? Seeing none, building and property.
Well, we had a Zoom meeting scheduled last week, and Mr. Pendergrass couldn't make it, so I asked to reschedule that to talk with the people from Enterprise on their proposal. And that meeting is November 8th at 10 a.m. And I will say Dawn and I were on a Zoom call with him, the representative, last week for about an hour. Brought me up to speed on proposal, so I know a little bit more than I did last week before, so I have nothing else.
Any questions for Frank? Seeing none, Deb, Finance?
Okay, the committee met on Tuesday, October 26th, and my notes are in the packet. The PA Historic Museum and Commission and Harb are recommending $2,500 be put into the 2022 budget as a local match for a $27,000 grant for new Harb design guidelines. And I'd like to make a motion that we tentatively get this into the budget for 2022.
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Prior to tonight's council meeting, there was a work session, and Ralph presented an overview of the LERTA program. We're kind of putting together a draft ordinance made up of parts of other ordinances that we've looked at to try and make it fit for Bellefonte. We're kind of at that point. I don't know if we need to seek legal advice at this point if we have nothing to present, but I am working on getting that draft together to move forward.
I just add, maybe a work, I know we talked about a work session specifically on this, where we, maybe council answer some of those questions. You know, how much do you think a property owner needs to spend to qualify? Maybe once we have that finished, we could take the information to the solicitor. There's just some gray areas with the mixed-use properties and so on.
Right.
We want to clarify, but.
But in the meantime, I could get the
Yes.
the fixed language of the ordinances actually laid out, and then there are areas that, whether it's the length of the abatement term, whether it's 10 years or 5 years or whatever, the investment requirement, whatever we decide to do that, and the type of property.
Yeah,
So I can get that together for council to take a look at.
yeah.
So I have a question for the two of you. Should there be a motion that once that's complete, go to the
That
solicitor?
would be nice, yeah.
Okay.
So, you want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion that once I get this draft together, we send it to the solicitor for review.
I'll second. Eden.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
And that's all I have for my report.
Okay, I want to go back to your report. You said you, and Ralph just mentioned that we could have a special work session. I talked to him earlier this afternoon. We don't need a motion, I understand, unless the council wants a motion to hold a work session on this issue. But I just wanted to bring that up for full disclosure.
Yeah, basically, if you want me to schedule a special off regular meeting night work session, which is, I think what Joanne's referring to.
Because had also talked about doing that for the budget, because we didn't think we had enough time before December.
But we did get the budget in tonight. My question about a special work session is, since that's an open meeting,
Yes,
would we have to have CNET here to record it?
we don't have to, but we could.
But
you
we
know.
would just need to, we would need to advertise that there was a work
Yes.
session on the LERTA program.
Yes.
I'll make a motion for that.
Okay, special meeting night,
Special meeting for Florida, yeah.
and,
And what about
I'll
the
second
budget?
it.
Does that include the budget as well, or is that,
If it's part of LERTA, yeah, I thought that's what.
well, LERTA would be the main part, and then if there's any fund review, and then we're getting.
Because we're getting up, we need to be able to present the budget, I think,
Yeah.
at the first meeting in December.
Yeah, I mean, we can
Yes.
include it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so a special work session for
before
review of the
December?
LERTA program and also updates on budget for
Okay,
2022.
So we'll send out a doodle like we normally do, check your schedules, and then, once we get consensus, we'll advertise a special meeting.
So
Okay.
this can be done administratively, correct?
Yes, yep.
So we don't really need a motion, he just needs to know that's what we want to do.
Okay, great,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. I don't know if it comes under finance since it's not a tax item, but I asked last meeting of Finance Committee could look at giving the Borough Water Authority or the Borough Authority some funds out of the water fund for 5 years to help us beautify the spring area down here and put a pond back in so we have a reflecting pond again. I think we have a good chance of getting some money from the government, but it would be nice if we had those funds, we could move forward. And when you go to tie in, say, the band shell, everything in that corner there, it would be helpful for the authority to have that money.
You're talking the bulk water fund.
Yeah, I'm just asking, you, since it's not in, I don't know if that's in the budget, I said it's a separate fund though.
Yeah, separate fund, and so it's other than, something different than
Yeah,
the traditional water fund.
yes. So, anyway, just consider that, all of council, I appreciate that.
Reflecting fund, are you talking about the big spring?
Yeah, so we're looking at.
Don't we already have some projects?
Well, there's gonna be a proposal on tomorrow night, actually, at the Water Authority meeting, to show you a couple of designs or something. We have things in mind, but to tie that whole area of the Talleyrand Park and
So,
the,
buddy, you're right, this does need to go through the finance
yeah,
committee.
okay, then I requested.
And I think what would be helpful for the finance committee is if you can give them some idea of what kind of amount of
Yeah,
money that you're.
matter of
looking
fact,
for.
I think tomorrow night I'm gonna ask the authority to send the council a letter explaining a little bit of that, so you have a record.
Great, thank you.
This would be for funds, seed funds for match, or for grants. The borough will, the authority will go out and apply for grants with this amount of seed.
No matching.
Pardon me?
Just so we have the funds.
Seed funds
Yeah.
from the bulk fund to the authority, but the authority would turn around and try to use those funds for state and federal grants or whatever they can
Yeah.
find.
Yeah,
It would
Right, so-
surely help to beautify the area down there.
So the funds would be expended if the grants were awarded.
Yes. I mean, we wouldn't do the project if we didn't have the money.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so if you can get that.
Yeah, engineer probably, I think he gave us some kind of estimates too, so we can include that.
All right, thank you.
anything else for finance and government performance? Seeing none, Parks and Rec, Melissa?
Yeah, I'd like to take these two out of order just to do the easier one that seems to be easier first. That would be the Talleyrand croquet. If you've read my notes that I sent in, it's pretty clear what they're asking to do. They would just like to they would just like to fix up the figure 8 in the Talleyrand annex. If you have any specific questions of what that entails, I can try to answer them. But it's basically just them doing some volunteer work and spending some of their own money to fix up some divots in the grassy area. If there are no questions, or maybe I should make the motion, I would like to make the motion to approve Talleyrand Croquet's request to perform landscaping in the Talleyrand annex figure 8.
I'd be glad to second that.
Humboski and Prendergast. Questions? I have one and one only. I like the idea. My question is at the end of their letter, they asked to have another sign put into Talleyrand Park. Talleyrand Park Committee has consistently said they didn't want any more signs. Has this been discussed with them?
They did not bring that up in their meeting with us, with the Talleyrand Park Committee. We just discussed the sod and the reseeding and the dirt. We didn't discuss anything other than that.
So could we hold off on the sign until after that discussion with the park committee is held? And let them go ahead with the rest of it?
Yeah, if we could just move forward with the measure that as I put forward without the sign language in there, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. No sign for right now.
The second part, if you read, the proposal was not included with the visual proposal was not included in the packet from Mark. I don't know if John has it that he can share it on the screen. Mark is here to discuss it. If you have any questions, basically what he would like to do is a group of downtown merchants would like to gift a temporary ice rink that would last between 5 and 7 years. They have a sponsor who's willing to maintain it during that time. The ground would be, any changes to the ground would be, are only temporary, and the landscaper is willing to make the ground as it was before the rink was installed. That would be yearly. If you have any other questions, Mark is available. If Mark's on the Zoom with us, so he can chime in.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Mark.
Mark, why don't you give us a little bit of background so that we know what's going on?
Absolutely. Are you guys looking at the presentation by chance on your side?
Yeah, we're looking at the picture.
Just tell him when, Mark, tell me when to change the slides.
Oh, okay. Well, I tell you, Dawn, is that Dawn talking?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll just give you the go for it. So for the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a couple business owners who've been talking about trying to establish some kind of ice skating rink in the park. And the biggest thing that we look at it as, it's a draw for town during the winter months. And that's what this proposal is really about. It's about creating this ambiance that you see in movies, on TV shows, and bringing that to life in Talleyrand during the winter months when there's not a lot of activity happening in the park or in downtown during those months. So we're hoping that this is not just a way for folks to come out and enjoy Bellefonte, visitors and families alike, but also a way to engage with downtown merchants, all businesses, organizations, and so on. So it could be an economic driver. Dawn, if you just want to go to the next page, page 2. We kind of look at this as the classic scene from all the movies, whether it's the black and white scenes from back in the 30s and 40s to the scenes that you see in movies on Lifetime or something like that, where it creates that atmosphere. And Bellefonte is just one of those towns that has it all going for it. Not many small towns have a park like Talleyrand. We don't have the ambiance, or they don't have the ambiance that we have. And so we just look at this as a way to not just bring people in town and explore, but become like a driver for downtown businesses throughout the winter months. There's a lot of big cities that do this, and there are a lot of small towns. For instance, Bollesburg, Harris Township has one that they've been operating for quite a bit of years. To great success. Recently, we just learned that they are now starting a winter festival of sorts. One of my business partners, he's in Aspinwall, right outside of Pittsburgh, and Aspinwall is very much like Bellefonte, train station, park, all the same look and feel. They had an ice skating rink that lasted 6 years. The only reason that they got away from it was because their borough wasn't going to be as engaged in terms of just putting it up, tearing it down, which is what we're asking to do of Bellefonte Borough. Dawn, if you want to go to page 3, please. So like I said, for the last 4 years, we've been talking about different types of rinks, and the biggest thing was how we're going to operate it, who's going to maintain it. The other big thing was just the cost of entry, particularly when it comes to refrigerated rinks. The smallest rink that we found that has a refrigeration unit was starting at like $75,000. Of course, that's not going to happen. Business owners are not going to be able to support that. And that's something that operationally then needs to be maintained. On the flip of that, we start looking at rental costs. There are companies out there that will bring a rink in, set up the rink, maintain it sort of like from a monthly standpoint, but monthly rentals were like $35,000. So when you get to the monthly rental fees of a refrigerated rink, you start to then think about, well, why don't we just buy one? But then the costs tend to go up. And then there's also synthetic ice. We looked at that. Synthetic ice is, low maintenance, of course. You can skate on it just like regular ice. But it's quite expensive as well. Synthetic ice is pretty much starting at about $25,000 for a small rink. So through all of our research and everything, these businesses that we've been talking for the past 5 or so years, or for the past 3 to 4 years, have been looking at a temporary rink. So one that we've researched, there's about 5 or 6 companies out there that we've been researching. We've talked to them all, narrowed it down to one company who has a great track record. And we'll talk a little bit further about what their rink looks like and how it's made and structured. But that rink itself, as Melissa said, and that's what did last 6 years, and it was the exact same brand. Don, if you mind, go to page 4. So right now we have about 6 or 7 sponsors, businesses who will purchase and then donate the rink to Bellefonte Borough. Through our preliminary conversations with the borough, we are going to then pass that ownership to the borough, and then the borough would set up the rink, tear down the rink, and store the rink. So this rink is everything. Everybody says it takes about an hour to set up. There are no tools, there's no drilling, there's nothing that has to be like staked really far into the ground. It is really supposed to be ease of use to install and ease of use to tear down. And when you do tear it down and store it, it's in a small footprint as well. I'm not sure exactly how large the footprint is of this particular rink that we'll talk about in terms of
You're freezing up. Try again.
Between 8 feet wide and 15 feet long. And then on the following page, Don, if you go to page 5, please. This is just sort of the process outline of where we are today. So the procurement of the rink. There are 6 businesses. We're going to purchase it, donate it. Transfer of owner would go to the borough. The sponsorship, the sponsors of this rink will not exceed 8 businesses. We're trying to keep even just those involved, relatively small footprint. We'll talk about sort of our idea on signage too, and that way even that becomes tasteful when we show some signage within the park itself. The sponsors will not be operating the rink. There wouldn't be any concessions. There wouldn't be any skate rentals at this time. I mean, we would hope within year 1, we see how year 1 goes. And year 2, maybe we are ready for skate rental stand. Maybe we're ready for some concessions. There's that balance between, some of the businesses who are on our sponsorship list here, the donors, want to be mindful of not to have a whole bunch of concessions or food trucks when we're trying to keep people, using and going and eating at some of the local establishments. And as Melissa said, one of the sponsors is a landscaping company, and they're going to donate the products, and they'll maintain the rink by clearing the snow and the main walkway to the rink itself. So we'll talk a little bit more about what they're going to bring to the table. The installation, the structural maintenance, and the repairs, there's a repair kit that comes with this rink as well. The tear down and storage of the rink would be through the borough. So again, it is relatively simple from what they've showed us. It takes about an hour to an hour and a half to install, same amount of time to tear it down. Filling it with water. In our last call with Parks and Rec, we talked about possibly just having one of the fire departments come and fill it up, and then store the rink in the off season. Also discussed with the borough handling of insurance and any liability. So once that transfer of ownership would happen, everything so far to date, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody on the borough side, but I think solicitor and insurance company said everything is fine. It would fall under the current, or at least an umbrella policy of the insurance provider of the borough. And then the borough road crew will only clear any snow at the rink if they have maximized and taken care of everything else within the borough. So that's the biggest thing. This is why we wanted to have a landscaping sponsor as part of this, because we knew that borough was going to have to maintain sidewalks, roadways, throughways, and make sure that all of that was taken care of for residents before borough staff spent any time helping with the park itself. Donna, if you mind, go to page 6. So this is about the landscape company. They will prep, maintain, and handle the cleanup at no cost to the borough. This is what Melissa was talking about. So they will, before anything gets going, they will put down tarps, then sand on top of the tarp, so that way when we're ready to tear everything down, that sand is not just gonna go right directly into the ground. So one thing that's not in here is the tarps and the sand. They will install a walkway from either the promenade walkway or from High Street. We'll talk about that in another slide here. But they're gonna supply all these bricks. They've got an abundance of bricks. They're gonna actually make the walkway. So what they would do is they put bedding sand down, landscape fabric, to prevent any damage to the existing grass, and then put these bricks on top of it. They will install lighting, some four to six, I think, pathway lights along the walkway that would take you to the rink itself. They will handle the snow removal from the rink and the walkway. So if we get a big snowfall, they will remove it from the rink itself, from the ice, and then also make sure they maintain the walkway to the rink. But then the borough would handle the rest, right? The promenade area, the sidewalks as they do today. And then the landscaping company would handle all the cleanup and removal of all debris and temporary landscaping, aerate and overseed all the areas that would be compromised by the rink if there are any, and install and return the area to its original state. So you've got 8 or so businesses who want to purchase the rink, donate to the borough/community. One of those is a landscaping company who will take care of the maintenance of the rink in terms of snow removal, access from the street or promenade to the rink itself. And then the borough would be handling insurance and then installing it, maintaining it only if there is a need to, fix a panel, push something against it or do whatever, tear down and store it. Page 7 is the proposed area at Talleyrand. So this is right from the gazebo. So this is where we feel it creates, this really great ambiance of, you see the promenade, you see the gazebo, it's right along the stream, you have the walkway there. Cars at the traffic stop can see it, pedestrians who are walking see it, there's plenty of parking. There are, of course, the bathrooms at Talleyrand, more easily accessible to restaurants and businesses in town. The proposed area for the rink. Slide 8, Don, if you can go to the next page. This is just 2 options that we're considering in terms of the walkway and signage. So the walkway could either come from the promenade. Again, it just depends on if that is the most accessible. In our last conversation, it seemed that it made more sense to have a shorter walkway from High Street, from that area, kind of near the Governor's Memorial, that particular space. The green line there would represent temporary signage, which will only be there for the duration of the rink when it is up in the winter time. That signage, of course, comes down when it's not there. Again, what we're trying to do is just make this as tasteful as possible, fit within the current ambiance of everything else. So even from an overall sponsorship standpoint, we do not want to do anything that distracts the beauty from the park. Page 9, Don, next page. This is the rink itself. It would be 40 wide by 80 long. It's engineered by the same panels that they use for NHL. However, it's just not as tall. It's about 2 to 2.5 feet tall. That becomes less if we have a lot of snow, when snow is padding the outside of it. You can just see that it's just easy to install. Those are red brackets that keep the panels together. The blue on top of that is padding that goes around the entire rink itself. Everything that you see there on the outside is supporting what's underneath it, which is a really heavy duty liner. So this rink, because we want to go with a professional type of rink, is going to be a liner that is rated for Parks and Rec. So this is not like a backyard liner. This is something that should be a little bit more heavy duty. And again, no tools required. It's about 60 minutes to install it. And that's about it. So that's where we're at. I mean, we look at this as an opportunity to maximize the park in the wintertime, make it a tourism driver, and an economic driver for local businesses in town, And, just hope that we can get, a lot of help from Mother Nature, of course, through the course of having this up in the wintertime. It would be great to have this in time for Victorian Christmas, just in terms of whether that's gonna happen or not. It's gonna be really challenging based on how quickly we'd have to move on things. We do know the company's told us we're at about a 4 to 6 week rate in terms of us getting materials in place. But again, all these rinks, what's nice about them is they are there for, the holidays, but then also have a life after the holidays too. Not like they're up for, say, Victorian Christmas. They're up for just, say, Santa's Express. They're there for that. They add to that holiday ambiance, and then they still maintain that through the months after those holiday activities have concluded. So hopefully that helped kind of explain, if you didn't have a chance to review that before this, hopefully that was beneficial.
Mark, this is Debbie Fleet, and I have some questions.
Yep.
Did you have an estimate or approximately the months of operation that you would like to do this?
Yeah, so most places with temporary rinks get 3 months out of it. Of course, there's gonna be times where you're not gonna have the weather cooperating with you. It would be the landscaper's job and job of the businesses to just make sure it maintains a tastefulness even when there is no ice in it. There's an additive actually that comes with these rinks to add to the water that helps expedite the freeze and maintain that freeze. So even at warmer temperatures, the idea of this additive is to maintain skatable ice for as long as possible. So the rink itself, if all goes well in terms of just, the care of it, it should maintain itself for a good 5 years. In terms of how long a season is, it really is going to come down to just how long we can maximize it. If by chance each year we're able to get it up pre-Victorian Christmas, I think that would be, our wish. We'd anticipate that, having it up for the holidays is key. It may not happen this year, but in the next, 4 to 6 years would be great. And then just keep that up, hopefully through mid-March. A lot of the rink that we've been talking to, even my one partner in Pittsburgh, the rink that they had typically was through March. They might have a good chill in April, but typically it was, starting to plan for tearing it down in mid-April.
Okay, my other question is how many gallons of water does this hold, and where do you empty it if it's got a chemical additive in it?
So that's a great question. So 2 things. One, I don't have the gallons right now. Our last discussion for this particular, our Parks and Rec discussion, we talked about being able to empty the water without additives, obviously, into Spring Creek. That would just have to be, pure water, would have to make sure everything from, the fire department would have to tell us exactly, where the water's from, is it okay, is it safe? I can't remember if it was Bud, we talked about this on the last call. That'd be one way to do it. If we add the additives, then yes, we're gonna have to figure out a different solution to get rid of the water. Not all parks and recs who utilize these use the additive. The one that we have been researching does say it's biodegradable. I don't know if that is something that we want to chance, right? There's a lot of different ways to explain biodegradable, and I'm not sure I'd want to see that go into Spring Creek. So I would say it's either we have a solution for it if we use that additive, or we say, you know what, let's not chance it. Let's let Mother Nature do her thing, and then either let it run off or let it filter into the stream somehow, some way. Or, again, my partner in Pittsburgh said that the fire company actually siphoned a fair amount of it back into their trucks because it's water. It's still going to put out a fire if they need to use it. So there's still a way to recycle the water rather than let it go, let it spill.
Okay, and my last question is this installation has a 2-foot wall, roughly. Are there steps for people to get up
Yes.
to this thing?
Yep. So they say that it is about 2 feet, but that changes just based on the elevation and how you can have, so naturally, right, gravity is going to make the ice flat once they fill it with water. But one side might be a little bit higher than the other side in terms of, the step over. It's about 1.5 feet in most cases. 2 feet is the max, and I think the 2 feet is the max height with the bumper itself, the blue part around it. In conversation with our landscaping company, we're talking about ways to make the entry even easier. So Matt, the landscaper, was talking about a way he's got to have a system in place for him to actually take his four-wheelers onto the ice, right, or snow blowers to remove the snow. So it'd be the same pathway that we're hoping for skaters to walk over rather than have to step over a large area.
Okay, thank you. So if the weather doesn't cooperate and you're not able to keep it frozen, does it become a large wading pool?
Reflecting pond.
Yeah, a very large reflecting pond.
Right, I heard that discussion earlier. Yes, I mean, I guess it could. There's no way of knowing, right? We don't have enough information. We just started having conversations with Harris Township to see sort of, what they do, but it has not been, I don't think, an issue. My partner in Aspinwall said that it typically was just like, people just knew it. The community knew that it was just sort of a matter of waiting it out until, a good freeze came in again and took care of everything. So yes, it would be an ice skating rink filled with water until we get the cold temperatures again.
How deep is the ice?
I think the sales rep that I'm talking to said that it is about 8 inches to a foot. And again, it depends on the elevation of the landscaping itself. So one section might be a little bit deeper than the other section.
So the reason I'm asking that is a drowning issue for small kids who kind of fall into it, if it happens in the water.
Right, I'll confirm that. I'll find out for sure.
This Randy, I'll ask a couple questions myself. Now, when you say the borough's responsible for tearing it down, did I hear you correctly that the landscaper will remove the sand?
The sand?
Yeah, the sand base?
Yes, yep.
So they'll remove that, and then the borough just has to roll up the tarp or whatever is underneath the sand, correct?
Correct. Yeah, yep. So landscaping company would remove the sand, the tarps, take care of any landscaping that needs redone, have that completely cleared away. That's after the borough after they take down the rink itself. And then he has access to everything underneath.
And then the pathway, is that a temporary pathway, or is that gonna be left in place? It doesn't.
Temporary pathway.
Temporary, okay.
Yep, so he would lay down the sand, I can't remember exactly what he called that, let me get back to that slide. It was bedding sand and landscape fabric, yep, to prevent the damage. So he would lay down the brick on top, and then he's gonna recycle that stuff either for the following year or use it on another project, and then do the same thing, whether it's the same bricks or new bricks later on.
I just want to jump in here for a moment. The insurance company, as Mark said, did not see any major issues as long as we did the normal things, like if the ice melted, they would want us to block off the rink so that people don't get on it and maybe drowned or something. They would like a minimum amount of signage, that says this, that you're skating at your own risk. Please stay off the ice if the weather isn't ideal, whatever it would say. Typical things that you would expect to see at a public skating rink. They actually were not crazy about renting skates because it just adds more liability. So just in general, no red flags, but there were a couple things they would want us to do to lower any exposure. You know, proper signage, maintain it, block it off when it's not in use or the weather isn't good, those kinds of things.
So would that be like a snow fence or something to put around it?
Probably some kind of temporary, we have this, you know, they went to this plastic construction fence. I could see something like that being put up.
Sort of like we had around the playground at the beginning of the
Yeah,
pandemic.
Hey, Mark,
yes.
Yes.
I was at the meeting on Zoom meeting the other day, but I don't think we ever asked, did you ask the other people that have the rinks how many hours a day it was used, or did they run, like people on there round the clock, or how did that work?
It was around the clock, yeah. So it basically came down to how fast you can maintain the ice, right? So landscaper or volunteers would have to make sure that it was ready to go, ready to skate as often as possible. But it typically was just a daytime to early evening thing, right? So, you know, that basically closed the rink. I think in Asmal, they close at 8 o'clock. So I think it's up to us in terms of, you know, when we think we should basically open it and close it. But it was not really universal. I'm not sure what Harris Township did. Let me see. Yeah, she didn't mention exactly how long they keep it open, other than just they love it, the community loves it, and now they're doing like winter festivals, you know, around it.
So you mentioned lights on the brick road. Are you expecting lights on the skating rink if you're going to like 8 o'clock at night? And if so, who is purchasing those lights and how are we electrifying the area? Is it solar power? Is it hooking up into the few electric slots that we already have in that area?
Yep, the walkway lights are all solar powered. I can't remember what Matt said, they put off a decent amount of light, but again, that's gonna be mostly walkway to and from the rink itself. We are hoping, just based on the amount of light that's there right now, and Melissa, maybe you can answer this question for me, we're assuming that the other lights are going to maintain where they are right now, the bistro lights. That's been casting a lot of light into the park. We got the gazebo that's lit up itself. So we do feel that there's enough light there for skating into the early evening. But there will be, as of right now, Joanne, not looking to tap into any electricity, not looking to illuminate the rink itself. We do know that there are a lot of places that have done that. Even things as simple as just one side has some 2x4s in the ground and it just strung lights across to each board. But other than that, I think it's really at our discretion. For year one, we're hoping that there's just enough light that is cast in that part of town through the park itself. And, you know, see where year 2 and 3 and beyond go. It would be great to maybe even have lights you know, that are not necessarily go across the water, because we don't want those to fall into it if it's just water sometimes. But there've been kinds of, not bistro lights, but like the waterproof, wrapped in plastic, like LED lights that we've seen in a couple places.
I believe that this section of the park was suggested by Ralph and Don because it is more well lit than the figure 8 side. So this is the best chance at illumination in this park.
It's a natural area for that.
So,
It's not very flat. So.
yeah, so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
John, how many gallons is that?
I don't know.
50 by 90. It's about
16,
33,000.
16, 20,000, I thought.
I got 33,000.
I
You
was
should do
just
that
thinking
with
back to my youth, how many times the pond did not freeze.
Yeah,
Does,
Winters
Wait,
these
wait,
days.
does Mike need a
Hold on.
second for his motion?
Hold on, we have, Mike made a motion to allow the ice skating rink. We have no second.
no, I'll second it.
I will second.
Okay, Hamboski. Now we can just do this fun.
You don't count.
I get it.
I just want to say, the committee thought it would be great for families to come down there in the afternoons or evenings or weekends or whatever.
Yeah.
Bring their kids down. I was on one of those in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, about 3 or 4 years ago, and they had a similar rink set up. But no, they actually had skate rentals and everything there, but it was packed. Of course, that's Philadelphia, not here, but just something else for the kids to do.
Well, buddy, Tom and I and you, maybe Randy, can remember when they used to freeze the school grounds,
Oh, yeah,
the school commons off for ice skating,
yeah.
behind the elementary.
Well, we used to have one up at the tennis courts too. We used to flood that, but we didn't do that for quite a while either.
All right, we'll sit around here later on, talk
I
stories.
know.
I would like to get to bed before midnight tonight.
Gina wants to hear this.
This is out of order. It's already 9 o'clock and we still have the rest of the agenda. So unless we have something really apropos to this, then I'd like to move for a vote.
I agree. Call the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aye.
So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Alright,
You're opposed?
You opposed?
A little late.
I think I had the last time too.
Melissa, are you?
oh, I'm for it.
Too bad, too late. Too
Get
late.
with it, woman.
I think you opposed to croquet too.
Okay, so it's unanimous.
Awesome, fantastic, thank you so much. We're really excited about it. We'll put things pedal to the metal, get things moving, and reach out to the borough and start talking about next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Anything
Great, thank
else?
you all.
Anything else, Melissa?
No, I thank Mark and the other downtown businesses for thinking about the borough and our residents to do something like this. There's some concerns that the Talleyrand Park Committee has that I'm going to work with them on and continue to work with Mark on signage. Because I know that's going to be a point of discussion that we want to get right the first time, but thank you all.
Okay, thank you. John, Human Resources.
Yeah, okay. The non-uniformed union contract, renewal terms are being clarified in writing. A tentative Dawn is preparing a draft of the tentative agreement that'll be presented to council for consideration soon. Any member of the HR committee that has any input to Dawn's draft, Dawn would greatly appreciate that. Soon.
How soon is soon?
Yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get it to the union, as soon as possible, so they get their opportunity to review it.
I can't do it to Wednesdays while I'm asking.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Okay. Okay. We are, in other items, the committee is also working on a social media policy. That's just for information at this time. No actions required. And as a reminder, the borough manager and chief of police evaluations by council members are due by the 15th. Please send them to the council president. And that is my report.
Any questions for John? Seeing none, moving on to safety, Randy?
Okay, we'll see how we can drag this one out.
So first, let me clean up a little housekeeping here. At the fire exec meeting held on October 28th, the committee made a motion to approve and appoint Tim Streffler to the Safer Grant Ad Hoc Committee to assist in the recruitment and retention program. The Bellefonte Fire Department also are approving of the 2022 fire budget as presented, allowing council changes to the budget allowing changes of the budget by council that benefit the Bellefonte Fire Department, which is something we'll talk about when we move to approve the budgets. At this point, we have Chief Lohr here, and he had to put together a nice presentation. I don't think we've seen this for a while, if we've ever seen him at all. So it's something new, but I think, Gary goes through it. If you've looked at it, hopefully you understood what the message he was trying to get across. So I'll turn it over to Gary, Chief Lohr.
I guess everything was sent out to you in your packets. I guess the best thing I can do is just ask Is there any questions or anything I need to explain in detail? I like the room being silent. I was hoping I didn't give too much information, but an emergency reporting we've been using for years that had all this information. Like I stated in my opening statement, last year we weren't here to give you a 2020, so I threw the 2 years in there to show that everything increased from 2020 to 2021 currently. And tried to break it down to show you where we spend our time in the townships, the borough, different type of calls, and some of the manpower we're running.
Well laid out.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
You had some information in there too, Chief, about the apparatus and fire, additional trucks that you purchased this last couple of years. Just wonder if anybody had any questions on those. That's my report.
Okay.
Thanks,
Any
Chief.
questions? Seeing none, Doug, water refuse and compost?
Okay, authority meeting will be held tomorrow night, Tuesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. We'll be discussing big spring cover design ideas being sought in conjunction with the regular authority meeting. The authority will be taking public comment and input on the design ideas for the new cover over the big spring. Comments and ideas will be received throughout the month of November, either by a phone call, email, or just word of mouth to a council person or an authority member. Also in your packet, there's a schedule of the holiday refuge pickup dates. Veterans Day, which is Thursday, November 11th. The alternate trash pickup will be Wednesday, November 10th. Thanksgiving is Thursday, the 25th of November. The alternate trash pickup day will be Wednesday, the 24th. As we said at last council meeting, brush and grass bin pickup will end on Wednesday, November 17th. That's the Wednesday before the week of Thanksgiving. Leaf pickup will continue until there's a significant snowfall, and it will follow. Typically, it will follow the refuge truck route. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just a reminder, not to interrupt you, but the
Yeah.
Wednesday, or the weeks that there's a holiday, November 11th and November 25th, Thanksgiving, those weeks, there's no grass brush pickup because the
Okay.
refuse is being moved to Wednesday.
No grass pickup on the week of the 11th and the week of the 25th, but that's expired by then, the 25th anyhow, so. Musser Lane Compost Center will no longer be open after November 20th on Saturdays from 8 a.m. until 11:45. I have to ask this question, will the key be available for folks to come in and get it after that period?
Yes, weather permitting. We do not maintain the grounds, the compost area, so we don't want to see anyone get stuck. You know, if the
Sure.
weather isn't ideal, it would not be open, but other than that, people can stop in and get the key.
Okay. Let me see. That completes my report.
Back to the Spring Creek, Big Spring cover design, that meeting's tomorrow night, which
Yes.
is election day.
Yes.
Is there going to be some, sort of like we have in the back room with these things for the public hearing on the,
I don't know if Blue Card Horn is they gonna?
They don't have the boards, they have a presentation. We're gonna try to videotape that on our own and then put that on the web
okay,
for people to see.
that'll be helpful.
That's our
And
plan.
this is just a fact-finding event. We're asking for input through the month
Yeah.
of November. Nothing etched in stone.
Exactly. I think we want to stress that. We have some concepts, but that doesn't mean that's your option.
That is
We're
correct.
looking for ideas.
And we would love to see somebody from the band shell committee attend, because we want to work together
I
with.
think Mr. Bathgate is planning to be here.
Great, great. Look forward to seeing you. Yes, sir, Michael.
Were you going to cover the holiday schedules for the trash?
You already did.
Media.
I didn't hear the
Veterans Day and Thanksgiving.
The-
No problem.
The 11th is the holiday,
Right.
the collection will be on the 10th.
And Thanksgiving is the 20,
Fifth?
the Wednesday before is pickup.
Yep. You okay?
Yep. Okay. I just didn't hear it.
Yes, buddy.
Excuse me, last meeting, I asked to have a letter from the spring water, One Water System Resources, whatever.
It's down under
Been
old
like
business.
two and a half, well, is it down on there? I'm
It's
sorry.
down under old business.
No, I didn't see,
and
I didn't get that
Central
for
Mass will do
you.
it
Sorry.
right now so that we don't
I'll
have
wait.
to come
Yeah,
back
we got
to
it.
it.
We got it.
I did follow up after the last meeting. Paul DeCack and Bill Sharp are still working on it. As I said at that meeting, that we don't have another commission meeting until the November 20th.
Probably that will be discussed again at the authority meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah, I just don't have it, and I requested it, and it hasn't come in.
I hate to say it, it seems like we're being stonewalled for some reason. I don't know why we can't get a simple yes or no answer. We have two items, one question. Are you gonna try and manage our water, and you're gonna cost us money? I can't get a simple yes or no. And I think the council ought to be concerned about that, because if you ever give away the management of our water system, I think we're done.
Well,
The
council can-
frustration for the Spring Creek Watershed Commission is there's no place in their charter specifically says they have no authority to regulate any utility.
Take that out of the letter they sent us, and I'll sign it tomorrow.
It's in the charter we
The other thing
signed.
we asked was for a resolution from the authority that says they will not restrict us from buying, selling, or controlling any of our water activities, and we haven't gotten that.
It's in the resolution already.
No, it isn't.
We're getting into the weeds here.
Yeah.
I call point of order. Can we jump back to safety real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
I left out, and since Chief Lure's here, if he wants to add anything, and I don't think this requires a motion, so I think this is more informational. But regarding the fire marshal issue that was talked about a couple meetings ago, Chief Weaver had spoken to the DA and Chief Lure. After those conversations, he has no problem with Chief Lure's ability to call fire marshals to a fire scene, and that they are to be added as an extra available resource and to assist state police when they cannot have an immediate response. As it is Chief's understanding that these additional fire marshals have all the certifications and training comparable to Pennsylvania State Police. Anything to add to that, Gary?
No, it's not replacing the state police. If we go with that, it's just opening our resources. It's just opening our resources up if we have to use them or not. That's not in the works yet. I don't have clarification through them to use them. It was just the next step to move on, is all that was.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the water authority? That completes my report.
Moving on to streets then, Mary?
The committee met on October 28th. We have the two meetings coming up about the safety measures at the Diamond. The first one is this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. right here. And the second one is at 10:30 on Saturday. The boards with the pictures of the two suggestions, which are just two possibilities, or three possibilities if you include the possibility of going back to the way things were, will be here, will be visible, but we're still looking for other input. If you would like to see one of those discussions and can't attend either of them, CNET will be recording the one on Thursday, and it will be on CNET, and it'll be on the website. And there will be you're welcome to write a letter. There'll be an online form, is that correct?
Survey, yeah.
That you can use to fill in, to give your suggestions, your input, your thoughts on the options on the table. And so we really encourage community members to make their voices heard and to get involved with letting us know what their thoughts are on what's going on at the Diamond. We continue to discuss, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that we have to remember and note, and I think it's gone out, but this room only holds 49 people legally, and so we have to be careful and monitor how many people we have in. And I'd also like to request that perhaps these tables get moved to the walls where it gives us a little bit more options for seating. I don't think as council we need tables for that evening, and just make it more comfortable for people.
I'd just like to thank Mary for mentioning that there is a third option, because I saw an article in Lock Haven paper last week that failed to mention that. Only gave the 2 options, so I'm glad you mentioned that tonight. Thank you.
I think there's actually more than 3.
There's probably as many as there are
Because we're supposed to
residents.
look at things that other people submit. and,
Right.
I've liked some things that I've seen online,
Well,
so, you know.
Personally, if there's
It's a
any
work in
letters,
progress.
personally, if there's any letters from people that are taxpayers or not residents of the borough, I haven't put much faith in those. We're asking our citizens about it, not people from State College.
Well, who put those designs together?
Not too slow.
This is out of order.
We're getting out
order. The only additional comment I would make is that in order to help the committee in making and the council in making final decisions, these comments need to be in a written format, so we have a record to know what is being said. Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, we are continuing to work on the issue of vegetation in the right-of-way, and I think we plan to discuss it again at our meeting on the 18th. It says council may consider action to clarify. Personally, to residents, I would just say if you have plantings there, I would not tear them out yet. If you don't have plantings there, I would not plant anything yet. And we are trying to come up with a solution that will make everybody equally happy or equally unhappy, and both will be true. That is our goal. So, and we are working very hard on this issue, I assure you. Yes.
Mary, was there any report on the data collected on the speed limit?
I'm sorry, I'll have to say that again.
Was there any data collected or report done on the information collected on Crawford Lane when they had the speed sign up?
Oh, so, yes, there was, and I can pull that out and I can put it in the next packet, but, it was, they basically found that they were not finding significant speeding on Crawford Lane. Yeah, that they put the sign both directions, and that they were not finding enough speeding. I think the average speed was like 26, 27 miles an hour, and I think it just seems very fast on
Well,
that.
26 and 27 miles an hour
Well, the
is
speed limit's
significant.
25.
No, it's 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I misspoke. It was just a mile or 2 an hour over the posted speed
18 mile
limit.
per hour was, there was no data supporting
Okay.
speeding. Well, there were outliers, of course.
Yes.
But generally speaking, I think the average was around 18 miles per hour.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
And some of the residents that live there
Yeah,
are guilty.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They have it on video.
But I appreciate that the extra speed limit signs were installed.
Yeah, I
on
think
that
it was
section.
really useful to be able to, for the officer to use the sign to see, to really see what was happening. I think that was a great use of that resource that we now have.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none? Energy environment. I think between Mike, Mary, and me, we'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. On October 27th, the Environmental Advisory Review Board, that's just what we're calling it right now, it doesn't have an official title, met with volunteer representatives from the county planning offices, businesses, residents, the Sustainability Institute, and 2 members of council and Don. We introduced ourselves, talked about the climate action plan, possible ways to reach out to the community, and need to create a formal board with maybe having a community naming contest. Ilona Bowrick from Penn State suggested we add a representative from the Center Region Sustainability Committee to help with ideas for our program going forward, as they are further ahead of what we are. And this type of makeup was suggested by ICLEI in our cohort training program. We agreed to meet about once every 2 weeks on a Friday afternoon to get this committee up and running according to our climate action plan. When we have more formal plans, we'll let you know. Anything to add to that, Mary? Okay. Second is the ICLEI cohort training meeting held on October 26th. Mike, Mary, and I attended that. This meeting focused on community communications. Other cities presented their ideas. I took notes. I sent them out to this review board that met the next day, and to help them along with their work. And some is what you would normally expect. Others will deal more specifically with types of sustainability information, feedback loops, work within communities. The third one, Solar United Nations, Solar United Neighborhoods. Neighbors are holding a home tour this coming Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. of homes throughout the county that already have solar energy. They're going to be in Bellefonte, Bollesburg, Phillipsburg State College, and Stormtown. On the table is a flyer if you're interested in taking one. And you can register by going to solarunitedneighbors.org, click on events, and then click on the solar tour in Center County article. And it's also being posted on our website and social media. And then I had several notes from the Green Gov stakeholders meeting held on October 28th. This is a twice-a-year meeting held by the governor's office. And there were mostly dealing with state level things, but there were 4 items that dealt with what our community would like. That's in your packet. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Okay. You want to do the rest of it, Mike?
Well, you got it pretty much covered. Taking most of my thing anyway. The installer has been selected for the solar co-op. They I just had it up here. The name of the outfit is Sustainable Energy Systems. They're out of Frederick, Maryland, and the co-op members are not required to use these guys, but they should check around for competitive bids if they don't want to, if they decide not to. The other one is the Department of Energy sent out an email or an e-newsletter for October, and it's got a bunch of links in it. I'm not going to go through all those. And the APPI Energy newsletter was also included in the packet. That's all I have. All right. Anybody got any questions? Not that I'll be able to answer, but.
Okay. Moving on then to special committee reports.
Yeah, we had a meeting on the 28th for the Airport Authority, and yes, it was brought up that there is a national pilot shortage and actually training pilot shortage. And flights are being reduced, even at University Park State College Airport. Also, we gave the approval to start renovation, and we're fortunate that we have our local architect, Hoffman and Leahy architects, that now are in Bellefonte, who have designed the new gate area restrooms. So once you're checked in with TSA, there will be restrooms in that area that you don't. So once you're through TSA, you'll still have restroom availability. Also, the shovels in the ground for the new equipment shed that's going to house salt storage tractors, lawnmowers, dump truck, T-tag, et cetera. So we're hoping that will be completed. Ralph, they're still
Trying to
saying
get by the
December,
end of
aren't
the year.
Huh?
We're trying to get done before the cold weather
Yeah.
sets in.
Yeah. So we're pretty excited about that. That's the report on the airport authority.
Any questions? Seeing none? Ralph?
Next month, next meeting.
Okay. Old business, we did the first one. The second one is the Reimagine Appalachia resolution. We need a motion to remove from table, discuss, and then vote on it one way or the other.
I'll make the motion to pull it from the table. Or, put it on the table.
Eaton
I'll second it.
and Clayton. Discussion.
I just had basically one comment. I looked a little more in the background how this thing got started, basically. From my understanding, what I could get off the internet was that the reason they started it, so many people are against coal-fired power plants. They're shutting down coal mines. They want all the power plants to shut down. So they're putting all these people out of work. So now they feel bad. Now they want to try and make jobs for these people instead of letting these people that lived all their life or worked in the mines all their lives. And one note I found this morning also, West Virginia just opted to make expensive upgrades to 3 coal-fired power plants rather than shut them down. So I don't think we should even be involved in this again. I don't know why we're looking at it, but it is what it is.
Buddy, I'll tell you why we're looking at it is because if you go to the west side of campus at Penn State, you'll see a half a block-sized area that used to include a coal-powered power plant with half of the acreage being a bag house. That was replaced by a natural gas powered power plant that eliminated the bag house, eliminated all the dirt, eliminated all the trucking dirt from the coal, and eliminated close to half of the manpower. So coal jobs are disappearing because those coal plants are manpower intensive relative to a natural gas plant, which makes them non-profitable for the power plants to operate. So forget about poor West Virginia. This is about how this whole area moves forward as we transition into a new economy. Coal's gone away because of natural gas. It's not going away because of anything other than natural gas doesn't have to be, natural gas doesn't have to be trucked to a plant. It doesn't have to be handled through a conveyor system, ground, put into a combustor, and then through a boiler. All that crap, even if they keep the boiler, is replaced with just a natural gas burner. And if they want to go to high performance, they just put in natural gas turbine generators, which are delivered 50 megawatts per unit on a truck bed. Coal is dead. We got to help people in West Virginia, in the western part of PA, transition away from it and move on to different economies. This is just a step that realizes that reality and that we can move forward. And we're saying, okay, in support of those folks, we're with you. Let's look at the new future, or let's look at the future. So that's.
I just want to tell you, you're not telling me anything new about Penn State power plants because I worked in there for 50 years. I worked on those coal boilers. I worked on installing the new gas burners that are in there now. And I worked on the new plant on the east side of town.
Would you put the coal back in?
What? No, I'm going to ask you, what do you do with all
This
those
is
families
point
you
of
put out of
order.
work?
Train them for new jobs.
Guys, let's focus,
Yeah.
let's focus on the resolution,
Anyway, yeah.
not on
Just
prior
vote on
things. Randy?
Okay. I have not been in favor of this resolution since it was brought to us. I don't see where it does anything for Bellefonte. I think we have a climate program that we still need to continue to work with. And I don't see where this benefits Bellefonte. Everybody in other communities are making their own, their own, their own plan for the future as far as what they're doing. When it comes to the ecology of the world. And, we have President Biden overseas spouting his issues and what he wants to do. And, unless you get everybody involved doing what they need to do with their plan in other countries, in other states, resolutions aren't going to do it. That's not the answer. Everybody has to get involved if that's the track they're running into. But I just can't support this. Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I chime in?
Yes.
Can I chime in as a
Melissa?
great-granddaughter of a miner and as a great-great-granddaughter of a literal coal cracker who lost her eye to cracking coal? I like this resolution, and I would like to make a motion to pass this resolution, hashtag 2021-1101-01, and whether or not this passes, at least we can get it out of committee and have it die or live on its own. So I would like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, that was Homboski and Abbott.
Roll call vote, please.
Yeah, do we have any other discussion?
No.
Seeing none, I would like to ask for a roll call vote.
Ready?
Yep.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Ms. Homboski?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Mr. Prendergast?
Yes.
Mr. Halderman?
No.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Mr. Brackville?
No.
Ms. Abbott?
Yes.
6-3.
Yep, 6 to 10 yeses.
So it passes. Okay. So move on. Ralph, you want to take the next one?
Take a look here real quick. Nittany Valley Joint Recreation Authority letter to municipalities. We would like to, this gives us some options for paying the contribution for the Nittany Valley swimming pool. And we think it would be best to refer this to the Finance Committee to look at those options, discuss them with Lori, our Finance Director, and then come back with a recommendation. So we don't really need a motion, but we'd like to just do that if that's okay.
Actually, Ralph, that's already been, this came up at the last meeting.
Okay.
And I followed up, and he sent this letter. So
Okay.
he already knows that we can pay for the first 3 years now, but we can't pay the 28,000 in 22 until July, and then we can't pay the final 28,000 until July of 2023.
Because that's not what the letter said, that's why we
Yeah.
were confused.
I spoke to
Okay.
I spoke to the fellow.
Okay, I was away, so I missed that meeting.
So,
If you want to follow up with the committee, that's fine, but I'm just telling you, I took care of it, like I said at the last meeting.
could
Okay, I
we
was
have
away.
it in, could we have that in the packet, because we're late in the
Sure.
evening? Can we just put that into a memo for the next meeting,
Yeah.
and then we can just handle it then? That way we have the information, and we know what
Okay.
we're voting on.
Sure. Okay, so that's what we'll do, we'll come back with that. Next item, just a reminder, we are switching email systems to Outlook. If you have experiencing any problems, let us know. Prefer you just contact Alyssa in our office if you're having any problems. That's all I have under old business.
Any other old business? Seeing none, new business.
We have a plan amendment for the contribution plan under the PMRS plan. We're just looking for a motion to advertise that ordinance, a draft that's in your materials this evening, and we'll bring that back. I don't believe, unless you, why my absence, you took care of advertising.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Eaton and Prendergast.
Is there anything else we should do?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Anything else?
That's all I have this evening.
Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, can we just back up one sec? Tomorrow's election day.
Vote.
Get out and vote.
Good luck to everybody who's on the ballot, wherever you
So,
You people that are
Prendergast, and who seconds it? Okay.
The other one was.
Okay, back Bill. We are adjourned at 9:35.
Well, you got it.